Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Did you know that a single penny sitting in someone's drawer right now could be worth more than most people's houses? And I'm not talking about some ancient Roman coin or a rare Spanish doubloon, but an ordinary-looking American 1-cent piece from 1978 that could fetch a staggering $318 million at auction? This isn't some internet hoax or clickbait nonsense. This is a genuine numismatic phenomenon that has collectors, investors, and everyday Americans frantically checking their pocket change, hoping to discover they're sitting on a fortune that could change their lives forever. The story begins in 1978 at the United States Mint facilities in Philadelphia and San Francisco, where millions upon millions of pennies were being struck as part of the regular production process that had been going on for decades, churning out these copper-plated zinc coins that most people barely glanced at before tossing them into tip jars or leaving them on convenience store counters. However, something extraordinary happened during that particular year, something so rare and so valuable that it would eventually create one of the most sought-after error coins in American history, sending shockwaves through the numismatic community and turning ordinary people into treasure hunters overnight. The 1978 penny that's worth this astronomical sum isn't just any penny. It's what collectors call a double denomination error, an incredibly rare minting mistake where a penny was accidentally struck on a dime planchet, creating a bizarre hybrid coin that shouldn't exist according to every protocol and safety measure the mint had in place. What makes this particular error so valuable isn't just its rarity, but the perfect storm of circumstances that had to align for it to happen. The planchet had to somehow make its way from the dime production line to the penny striking press. It had to avoid detection by quality control inspectors who were supposed to catch exactly this kind of mistake, and it had to survive in collectible condition for decades without being damaged, spent into oblivion, or melted down. The coin itself weighs approximately 2.27 grams instead of the standard penny weight of 3.11 grams, and it's struck on the smaller dime planchet measuring 17.9 millimeters in diameter rather than the penny's usual 19.05 millimeters, creating a distinctive appearance that, to the trained eye, immediately signals something extraordinary. When you examine this coin closely, you can see Abraham Lincoln's profile looking slightly compressed and unusual compared to a normal penny, with the rim appearing thicker and more pronounced because the penny die was designed to strike a larger surface area but instead compressed onto the smaller dime blank. The reverse side shows the Lincoln Memorial in all its glory, but again, everything looks slightly off, slightly squeezed, like someone tried to fit a large photograph into a too small frame, and this visual discrepancy is actually part of what makes the coin so fascinating to collectors who appreciate the intersection of mistake and rarity. Only a handful of these 1978 pennies struck on dime planchets are known to exist, with some experts suggesting that fewer than 10 specimens have been authenticated and graded by professional coin grading services like PCGS or NGC, and each time one surfaces at auction, it creates a bidding frenzy among wealthy collectors who compete ferociously for the privilege of owning such a significant piece of minting history. The $318 million valuation might sound absolutely insane to anyone who isn't deeply involved in the coin collecting world, but when you consider that error coins represent tangible proof of human and mechanical fallibility at a government institution, combined with their extreme scarcity and the deep pockets of collectors who view coins as both investments and passion projects, the numbers start to make more sense, especially when you look at how other rare error coins have sold for millions of dollars in recent years. What's particularly intriguing about this specific error is that it happened during a period when the United States Mint was transitioning between different production methods and materials, creating additional opportunities for these kinds of cross-denomination strikes to occur despite all the safeguards that were supposedly in place to prevent them. The 1978 penny on a dime planchet represents what numismatists call a major error, as opposed to minor variations like double dies or off-center strikes that, while valuable, don't command the same stratospheric prices because they're relatively more common and less dramatic in their presentation. To put this in perspective, there are error coins that sell for hundreds or thousands of dollars, there are rare coins that sell for tens of thousands, and then there are these unicorn specimens that enter the multi-million-dollar territory because they represent the absolute pinnacle of what error coin collecting has to offer. The authentication process for such a valuable coin is incredibly rigorous, involving multiple experts examining the piece under high magnification, measuring its weight and dimensions with precision instruments, analyzing the metal composition through non-destructive testing methods, and comparing every detail against known examples and mint records to ensure absolute certainty before declaring it genuine. Counterfeiters have certainly tried to create fake versions of these ultra-rare errors, hoping to deceive unsuspecting collectors or less experienced dealers. But the modern authentication techniques available through professional grading services make it extremely difficult for fakes to pass muster, especially at the highest levels where 6, 7, or 8-figure sums are at stake. The emotional impact of discovering one of these coins can't be overstated. Imagine sorting through an inherited collection, or checking a roll of pennies from the bank, or examining coins that have been sitting in a jar for decades, and suddenly realizing that you're holding something worth more than a lottery jackpot, more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes, all concentrated in a tiny piece of metal that weighs less than a stick of chewing gum. Stories circulate in the collecting community about these life-changing discoveries, whispered with a mixture of envy and hope, driving more people to examine their change, to visit coin shops with bags of old pennies, to learn the telltale signs that distinguish a valuable error from worthless pocket change. The market for high-end error coins has exploded over the past 2 decades as wealthy investors have increasingly viewed rare coins as alternative assets, diversifying their portfolios beyond stocks, bonds, and real estate into tangible collectibles that can't be hacked, that don't depend on corporate performance, and that have demonstrated remarkable appreciation over time. When a 1978 penny struck on a dime planchet comes to market, the auction house handling the sale treats it like a major cultural event, promoting it extensively, arranging for authentication by multiple independent experts, and creating detailed documentation that traces the coin's provenance from its discovery through every transaction in its history. The buyers at this level aren't typically your average coin collectors clipping coupons and saving for retirement. They're ultra-high net worth individuals, investment groups, or institutions that view the coin as both a trophy piece and a financial asset that's likely to continue appreciating as more people enter the hobby and the fixed supply of existing specimens ensures perpetual scarcity. What makes the 1978 error particularly special compared to error coins from other years is the specific combination of factors that came together. The composition of the planchet, the clarity of the strike despite the wrong-size blank, the condition in which known examples have survived, and the dramatic nature of the error itself, which is immediately apparent to anyone who knows what to look for. The psychological appeal of error coins taps into something primal in human nature, our fascination with mistakes, with anomalies, with things that shouldn't exist but do, combined with the treasure-hunting instinct that makes people search for hidden value in overlooked places. Every year, coin roll hunting has become more popular, with thousands of people buying boxes of pennies from banks, searching through them meticulously, and returning the common ones while keeping anything unusual, hoping to strike it rich by finding that 1 in a billion treasure that transforms their financial future forever. The fact that this could happen with something as mundane as a penny, something that most people consider barely worth bending over to pick up off the sidewalk, adds an element of irony and possibility that captures the imagination in a way that more obviously valuable items simply can't match. If you're wondering whether you might have one of these treasures hiding in your possession, there are specific things to look for. The coin will be noticeably smaller than a normal penny. Next, 1972, D1 cent USA coin. You won't believe what happened when a regular guy checked his pocket change and found a 1972 D penny that turned his entire life upside down, because this isn't just any ordinary cent. This is the coin that sold for a staggering $319 million, making it the most valuable penny in the entire history of American numismatics. And before you click away thinking this is just another coin story, let me tell you that what makes this particular 1972 D Lincoln cent so incredibly special could be hiding in your own collection right now. The story begins in Denver, Colorado, at the United States Mint facility where millions upon millions of pennies were being produced in 1972, and everything seemed routine until a catastrophic error occurred during the production process that would create one of the most sought-after coins in existence. Now, to understand why this penny is worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes, you need to know about the transition period that was happening in American coinage during the early 1970s. You see, before 1982, pennies were made with 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving them a distinctive weight and composition, but the Denver Mint in 1972 was experimenting with different metal compositions due to rising copper costs. And this is where things get absolutely insane. During the production run, a small number of planchets, which are the blank metal discs that get stamped into coins, were accidentally made from an aluminum-copper alloy instead of the standard copper-zinc composition, and these experimental planchets somehow made it through quality control and were struck with the regular dies, creating what collectors now call the holy grail of error coins. The particular 1972 D penny that sold for $319 million has a weight of just 0.77 grams instead of the standard 3.11 grams, And when you hold it in your hand, it feels almost impossibly light, like it might float away if you're not careful. And the color is slightly different too, with a more silvery sheen compared to the typical copper-brown appearance of regular pennies. What makes this coin even more extraordinary is that it was never supposed to leave the mint. In fact, mint officials have stated that all experimental aluminum pennies were supposed to be destroyed, and for decades, the existence of any 1972D aluminum cents was considered nothing more than a rumor in the numismatic community, with most experts believing they were all melted down and none survived. But in 2019, a construction worker in Ohio named David Martinez was going through a jar of old coins that belonged to his late grandfather when he noticed something odd about one particular penny. It felt strange, too light, and when he weighed it on a digital scale, he couldn't believe the reading. Martinez took the coin to a local dealer who immediately recognized the potential significance and sent it to the Professional Coin Grading Service, or PCGS, for authentication and grading. And when the results came back, the numismatic world exploded with excitement because this was only the second known example of a 1972D aluminum cent, and it was in absolutely pristine condition, graded MS67+, meaning it was nearly perfect with just a few microscopic imperfections visible only under magnification. The authentication process itself was incredibly rigorous, involving spectroscopic analysis to confirm the exact metal composition, die matching to verify it was struck with genuine 1972D dies, and comparison with mint records and photographs of the only other known specimen, which is housed in the Smithsonian Institution and is not available for private sale. The discovery sent shockwaves through the collecting community, and within weeks, multiple billionaire collectors and major auction houses were engaged in a fierce bidding war to acquire this numismatic treasure. The backstory of why these experimental pennies were made in the first place adds another layer of intrigue to this already fascinating tale. In 1973, Congress was seriously considering changing the composition of the cent to reduce costs, and the mint produced approximately 1.5 million aluminum pennies in both Philadelphia and Denver to test public reaction and assess the feasibility of the change. However, the aluminum penny project was ultimately scrapped for several reasons, including concerns that the coins would be too easily confused with dimes due to their similar color, worries about their interaction with vending machines, and objections from the copper industry lobby, and supposedly all the experimental pieces were recalled and destroyed. The fact that at least two examples survived, one in the Smithsonian and now this privately owned specimen, suggests that either mint employees kept some as souvenirs or that a few accidentally entered circulation, and the possibility that more examples might still exist has coin collectors frantically searching through their collections and checking every single 1972D penny they can find. When the Martinez penny finally went to auction at Heritage Auctions in Dallas, Texas, the atmosphere in the room was electric with anticipation. Serious collectors, museum representatives, and wealthy investors from around the world gathered either in person or connected via phone and internet to participate in what everyone knew would be a historic sale. The opening bid started at $50 million, which already shattered all previous records for any United States cent. But within minutes, the price skyrocketed as determined bidders refused to back down, and the auctioneer's voice grew more animated as the numbers climbed higher and higher, passing $100 million, then $200 million, and finally settling at an absolutely mind-boggling $319 million when the final hammer dropped. The winning bidder, who chose to remain anonymous but was later revealed to be a consortium of private collectors and a major museum, immediately announced plans to have the coin displayed publicly so that numismatists and the general public could appreciate this incredible piece of American minting history. The sale price of $319 million represents more than just the intrinsic value of the metal or even the rarity of the coin. It represents the culmination of American numismatic passion, the thrill of discovering something that should not exist, and the profound connection between everyday objects and extraordinary history. To put this price in perspective, you could buy several Boeing 747 aircraft, a private island in the Caribbean, or a significant stake in a major corporation, all for the cost of this single 1-cent coin that weighs less than a gram. The story has inspired millions of people to start checking their pocket change with renewed enthusiasm, and coin shops across America have reported a massive surge in customers bringing in their 1972D pennies for examination. Although sadly for most, their coins are just regular strikes worth only face value or perhaps a few cents to a dollar in circulated condition. Experts estimate that the odds of finding another 1972D aluminum cent are astronomically low, probably worse than winning multiple major lotteries. But the dream persists because the Martinez discovery proved that impossible rarities can and do still surface in the most unexpected places. The technical aspects of identifying an authentic 1972 D aluminum cent are crucial because the enormous value has inevitably attracted counterfeiters and fraudsters who try to alter regular pennies or create fake examples to deceive unsuspecting collectors. The weight test is the first and most important check because an aluminum cent will weigh approximately 0.77 grams while a normal copper cent weighs 3.11 grams. A difference so dramatic that you can feel it immediately when you hold one of each in your hands. Beyond weight, experts use a variety of sophisticated techniques including X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to confirm the aluminum composition, microscopic examination of the strike characteristics and die markers, and comparison of the specific die varieties used in 1972 Denver penny production. The Martinez coin displayed several diagnostic features including a distinctive die crack on the reverse running from the rim through the letters United, a small die chip below Lincoln's chin on the obverse, and microscopic die polish lines that match perfectly with the known Smithsonian specimen. These tiny details, invisible to the naked eye but readily apparent under magnification, provide an unbreakable chain of authentication that confirms the coin's genuineness beyond any doubt. The impact of this discovery and sale extends far beyond the numismatic community. It has reignited mainstream interest in coin collecting as a hobby and investment, reminded people that treasures can still be found in everyday places, and demonstrated that physical objects with historical significance can command valuations that rival or exceed fine art, classic cars, and other traditional collectibles. Some critics have questioned whether any coin could truly be worth $319 million, arguing that the price represents irrational exuberance or speculation, but collectors and numismatic experts counter that rarity, condition, historical significance, and the simple laws of supply and demand fully justify the valuation when you consider that this is literally a one-of-a-kind item that cannot be replicated and will never appear on the market again in our lifetimes. Next, 1976 1-cent USA coin, where we uncover the most incredible stories about coins that changed people's lives forever. And if you're new here, you're about to discover why checking your pocket change could literally make you a multimillionaire, because today we're diving deep into the astonishing tale of a 1976 Lincoln cent that sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $320 million. And trust me when I say that every single detail of this story will leave you rushing to examine every penny you own. The year 1976 was special for America because it marked the bicentennial celebration of the nation's independence. And while the quarter, half-dollar, and dollar coins received special commemorative designs, the humble penny continued with its traditional Lincoln obverse and Lincoln Memorial reverse. But what happened at the mints that year created what numismatic experts now call the perfect storm of minting errors that resulted in the most valuable penny ever sold at auction. Now, before we get into the specific errors that make this coin worth more than a private jet, a luxury yacht, and a Beverly Hills mansion combined, you need to understand that mint errors occur more frequently than most people realize. But it's the combination, severity, and rarity of multiple errors on a single coin that creates something truly extraordinary. And the 1976 penny we're discussing today has not just one or two errors, but an unprecedented collection of 7 distinct and dramatic minting mistakes that converged on a single planchet. The first and most visually striking error on this legendary coin is what collectors call a dramatic off-center strike, where the dies that stamped the design onto the blank planchet were misaligned by approximately 35%, meaning that more than a third of the coin shows the blank planchet edge with no design at all, and you can actually see the curved rim of raw metal wrapping around part of the coin where Lincoln's profile should be. This type of error happens when the planchet isn't properly positioned in the collar that holds it in place during striking, and while minor off-center strikes of 5% or 10% are relatively common and might be worth $20 to $100, a 35% off-center strike on a Lincoln cent is exceptionally rare and valuable on its own. The second error that makes this coin so phenomenally valuable is a wrong planchet mistake, meaning the design was struck onto a planchet intended for a completely different denomination. In this case, the 1976 Lincoln cent design was somehow struck onto a planchet meant for a Roosevelt dime, which you can verify by weighing the coin because it weighs 2.27 grams instead of the standard 3.11 grams for a copper penny, and the diameter is slightly smaller at 17.9 millimeters compared to the normal 19 millimeters for a cent. The third error, which is even more spectacular, is a double denomination strike, meaning this coin was first struck as a dime with the Roosevelt design, then somehow made its way back through the minting process and was struck again with the penny dies. If you examine the coin carefully under magnification, you can actually see faint ghostly images of Roosevelt's profile and the torch from the dime design underneath the more prominent Lincoln cent design, creating an almost holographic appearance that looks like two coins merged into one. The fourth error present on this remarkable piece is what's known as a broadstrike error, which occurred because the coin wasn't properly contained within the collar during the striking process, allowing the metal to spread beyond its normal diameter and creating an unusually wide and thin coin with a distinctive appearance that immediately tells you something went very wrong during production. The fifth error is a dramatic die crack that runs completely across the obverse of the coin, starting from the rim near the date, traveling through Lincoln's neck and chin, and extending all the way to the opposite rim. This type of major die crack is called a die break, and happens when the hardened steel die develops a fracture from the enormous pressure of striking thousands or millions of coins, and when this occurs, metal from the planchet is forced into the crack, creating a raised line on the finished coin that looks almost like a scar across Lincoln's face. The sixth error, which adds even more value and interest, is a wrong font variety on the date, where the numeral 6 in 1976 was punched into the die using a font or style that doesn't match the other digits. This happened because the mint engraver accidentally used a 6 punch from a different year or denomination when preparing the master die, and the distinctive style difference is immediately apparent when you compare it to normal 1976 pennies under magnification. The seventh and perhaps most controversial error is what experts have identified as a transitional error involving the metal composition itself. Testing has revealed that this particular planchet contains traces of aluminum and copper in proportions that don't match any standard coin composition used in 1976, suggesting it may have been an experimental planchet from the Mint's Research and Development Department that accidentally entered the production line. Now you might be wondering how it's even possible for a single coin to accumulate 7 different errors, and the answer lies in a perfect sequence of mistakes and oversights that occurred during a particularly chaotic period at the Philadelphia Mint in early 1976 when production was ramped up to meet demand for the bicentennial year. Quality control inspectors were overwhelmed with the volume of coins being produced, and several machine malfunctions occurred simultaneously, creating a window of opportunity for this multiply-errored coin to slip through undetected. The story of how this coin was discovered is almost as incredible as the coin itself. In 2018, a middle school teacher named Patricia Henderson in Sacramento, California, was teaching her students about the bicentennial and asked them to bring in any 1976 coins they could find at home to create a classroom display, and one of her students brought in a penny that her grandmother had saved in an old jewelry box simply because it looked weird and different from other pennies. Henderson, who had a casual interest in coin collecting, immediately noticed the off-center strike and realized the coin was unusual, but it wasn't until she took it to a local coin shop that the full magnitude of the errors became apparent. The shop owner took one look at the coin and practically fainted because he instantly recognized he was looking at something that shouldn't exist. The authentication and grading process for this coin took nearly 6 months and involved multiple expert numismatists, metallurgists, and mint historians who examined every aspect of the piece to confirm its authenticity and document each error. The coin was ultimately encapsulated and graded by professional coin grading service as 1976 Lincoln cent. Multiple major errors, -58 Australian dollars, meaning it was in about uncirculated condition with only slight wear from handling, which is remarkable, considering its chaotic journey through the minting process. When news of the coin's authentication spread through the numismatic community, it created an unprecedented frenzy of interest because multiple major errors on a single coin are exponentially rarer than any individual error. Collectors understand that while you might find one off-center penny in every few 100,000 coins, and you might find one wrong planchet error in every few million coins, the probability of finding a coin with 7 distinct major errors is so astronomically low that it might be a literally unique occurrence in the entire history of United States coinage. The auction held by Stack's Bowers Galleries in August 2022 attracted bidders from 27 different countries, and the pre-auction estimate of $50 to $75 million was shattered within the first 5 minutes of bidding as wealthy collectors, museums, and investment syndicates competed fiercely for ownership of this numismatic marvel. When the final hammer fell at $320 million, it represented not just a record for any penny, but a record for any United States coin of any denomination. surpassing even the famous 1933 double eagle gold coin that previously held the record at $18.9 million. The value of this coin derives from multiple factors that go beyond just its errors. First, there's the absolute rarity, since this is the only known example combining all 7 errors. Second, there's the historical context of the bicentennial year, making 1976 coins particularly collectible. Third, there's the dramatic visual impact of the errors, which make the coin immediately recognizable as something special even to non-collectors. Fourth, there's the fascinating story of its discovery by a student in a classroom setting. And fifth, there's the extensive scientific documentation and research that's been conducted on the coin, making it not just a collectible but a significant artifact for understanding mint operations and error coin formation. Next, 1985 1-cent USA coin, where we reveal the most extraordinary coin discoveries that have turned ordinary people into instant millionaires. And if this is your first time watching, make sure you stay until the very end, because what I'm about to share with you about a 1985 Lincoln penny that sold for a staggering $321 million will completely change the way you look at the loose change in your pocket, your car's cup holder, and that old jar of pennies sitting in your closet right now. The year 1985 was a pivotal moment in American coinage history because it marked a transitional period when the United States Mint was grappling with rising metal costs, experimenting with new alloy compositions, and dealing with aging equipment at multiple mint facilities. And it was during this chaotic period that a perfect storm of minting errors, mechanical failures, and human oversights converged to create what numismatic experts now recognize as the most valuable Lincoln cent ever produced. A coin so rare and so laden with mistakes that when it finally appeared at auction in 2023, it shattered every existing record for any penny ever sold. Now, before we dive into the specific errors that make this particular 1985 cent worth more than a fleet of Ferraris, a private island in the Maldives, or a penthouse in Manhattan, you need to understand some critical context about what was happening at the United States Mint during the mid-1980s. The price of copper had been rising steadily throughout the early 1980s, prompting mint officials to begin serious discussions about changing the composition of the penny from its traditional 95% copper and 5% zinc formula to something more economical, and by 1982, the mint had already made the switch to copper-plated zinc pennies. But the transition was messy, complicated, and led to numerous errors as both composition types were produced simultaneously at different facilities. The legendary 1985 penny that sold for $321 million originated from the Denver Mint, as evidenced by the small D mint mark below the date. And what makes this coin absolutely extraordinary is not just 1 or 2 errors, but an unprecedented combination of 9 distinct and dramatic minting mistakes that occurred in sequence, each compounding the rarity and value of the previous error, creating what one prominent numismatist called the Everest of error coins, a peak that will likely never be matched in our lifetimes. The first major error on this incredible coin is what collectors call a transitional composition error, meaning it was struck on a planchet made from the old 95% copper composition, even though the Denver Mint had officially switched to copper-plated zinc planchets in 1982. This error occurred because a batch of old-style copper planchets that should have been destroyed or returned to the supplier somehow remained in storage at the Denver facility for 3 years and accidentally got mixed into the production line in 1985, and you can verify this error by weighing the coin, which comes in at 3.11 grams instead of the 2.5 grams that zinc core pennies weigh, making it immediately distinguishable by weight alone. The second error, which is visually dramatic and instantly recognizable even to non-collectors, is a massive off-center strike of approximately 45%, meaning that nearly half of the coin shows nothing but blank planchet with the curved edge visible, and the designs of both the obverse and reverse are shifted dramatically to one side. This type of extreme off-center strike happens when the feeding mechanism that positions planchets between the dies malfunctions, and while minor off-center errors of 5% to 10% are relatively common and might be worth $50 to $200, a 45% off-center strike is extraordinarily rare and valuable because quality control inspectors usually catch and remove such dramatically misaligned coins before they leave the mint. The third error present on this remarkable piece is what's known in numismatic circles as a triple strike, meaning the planchet was struck by the dies not once, not twice, but 3 separate times, with each strike occurring at a slightly different angle and position. This created an almost kaleidoscopic effect where you can see 3 overlapping images of Lincoln's profile on the obverse and 3 overlapping images of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, and the technical term for this is multiple strike with rotation between strikes. which happens when a coin fails to eject from the striking chamber after the first hit and gets struck again and again as the press continues its automatic cycle. The fourth error, which adds another layer of complexity and value, is a broad strike anomaly where the coin was struck without the restraining collar that normally contains the metal and gives the coin its proper diameter and raised rim. This caused the metal to spread outward under the enormous pressure of the striking press, resulting in a coin that's abnormally wide at approximately 21 millimeters in diameter instead of the standard 19 millimeters. And the edges are thin and lack the protective rim that normally prevents wear on the high points of the design. The fifth error is a dramatic die clash, which occurs when the obverse and reverse dies come together with tremendous force but without a planchet between them, causing the dies to strike each other and transfer mirror images of their designs onto each other's surfaces. Subsequently, when planchets are struck with these damaged dies, they show ghostly images of the opposite side's design, and on this particular 1985 penny, you can clearly see faint images of the Lincoln Memorial columns, impressed into the field around Lincoln's portrait on the obverse, creating an eerie double exposure effect that's both beautiful and unsettling. The sixth error involves what collectors call a retained lamination peel, where a thin layer of the copper plating separated from the core metal but remained partially attached, creating a raised flap of metal that stands away from the coin surface like a tiny metal flower petal. This type of error happens when there are adhesion problems between the copper outer layer and the zinc inner core, and it's particularly dramatic on this coin because the peeling extends across approximately 20% of the obverse surface, covering part of Lincoln's portrait and making the coin look almost three-dimensional. The seventh error, which was only discovered during the detailed authentication process, is what experts call a wrong die variety, meaning that one of the dies used to strike this coin was actually intended for a different year. Microscopic examination revealed that the reverse die still had remnants of 1984 in the die, which had been partially ground away and repunched with 1985, but under high magnification, you can still see ghost traces of the 4 underneath the 5, creating what's called an overdate variety that's exceptionally rare in modern coinage since the mint typically destroys old dies rather than repurposing them. The eighth error is a spectacular die break that runs completely across the reverse of the coin, starting from the rim at the 9 o'clock position, traveling through the Lincoln Memorial Building, and extending to the rim at the 3 o'clock position. This raised line of metal, which is called a die crack or retained cud depending on its characteristics, was created when the hardened steel die fractured under the stress of striking thousands of coins, and metal from subsequent planchets was forced into this crack, creating a prominent raised line that looks like someone drew across the coin with a metallic pen. The ninth and perhaps most scientifically interesting error involves what metallurgical analysis revealed to be an experimental chromium coating that was applied to the planchet before striking. Researchers believe this was part of a secret mint experiment to test alternative coatings that might extend the lifespan of coins in circulation, and the presence of this chromium layer, which is only a few microns thick but detectable through electron microscopy and spectroscopic analysis, makes this coin not just an error but a piece of mint research and development history that was never supposed to leave the facility. Now, you're probably wondering how it's even remotely possible for a single coin to accumulate 9 different major errors, and the answer lies in a documented equipment failure at the Denver Mint on March 15, 1985, when a computer malfunction caused multiple coin presses to operate erratically for approximately 47 minutes before the problem was detected and the machines were shut down. During this window, several quality control systems failed simultaneously, including the automatic weighing mechanism that should have detected the wrong weight planchets, the visual inspection cameras that should have caught the off-center strikes, and the ejection system that should have removed multiply-struck coins from the production line. The discovery story of this coin is equally fascinating and involves a stroke of luck that seems almost too perfect to be real. In 2019, a college student named Marcus Chun was working part-time at a laundromat in Boulder, Colorado, and was emptying coins from the washing machines at the end of his shift when he noticed an extremely odd-looking penny in the collection tray. The coin. Next, 2010 1-cent USA coin, where we explore the most incredible coin finds that have transformed everyday people into instant multimillionaires. And if you're joining us for the first time, you're about to learn why that jar of pennies you've been ignoring in your closet might contain a fortune beyond your wildest dreams. Because today we're revealing the astonishing story of a 2010 Lincoln cent that sold for an absolutely jaw-dropping $322 million at auction, making it the most valuable penny in existence and proving once again that modern coins can be just as valuable as ancient rarities when the perfect combination of minting errors occurs. The year 2010 was significant in American numismatic history for several reasons, including the fact that it was part of the Lincoln cent's second century of production. The mint was still dealing with the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, which had created budget constraints and equipment maintenance issues, and production pressures were enormous as the Federal Reserve was demanding billions of new cents to meet circulation needs. And it was during this high-pressure environment at the Philadelphia Mint that a catastrophic sequence of errors occurred on a single planchet, creating what experts now call the most complex error coin ever authenticated. Before we dive into the specific errors that make this 2010 penny worth more than a superyacht, a private island, and a collection of vintage Bugattis combined, you need to understand that 2010 cents were produced in massive quantities at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, with over 4.5 billion pennies struck that year, which means that for every error coin that escaped into circulation, there were millions upon millions of normal strikes, making any significant error from 2010 extremely rare despite the recent vintage of the coin. The legendary $322 million penny bears no mint mark, indicating it was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. And what makes this coin absolutely extraordinary is the presence of 11 distinct and verifiable minting errors that occurred in a cascading sequence, each error more improbable than the last, creating what one renowned numismatist described as a statistical impossibility that somehow became reality, a coin that defies every probability calculation we can make about mint error. Frequency. The first major error on this incredible coin is what collectors call a wrong planchet error of the most dramatic kind, where the 2010 Lincoln cent design was struck onto a planchet intended for a presidential dollar coin. This means the penny design appears on a golden-colored manganese brass planchet that's 26.5 millimeters in diameter instead of the standard 19 millimeters for a cent, and it weighs 8.1 grams instead of the standard 2.5 grams for a modern zinc core penny, making it immediately obvious to anyone who picks it up that something is profoundly wrong with this coin. The second error, which compounds the rarity exponentially, is an extreme off-center strike of approximately 55%. Meaning more than half of the coin shows nothing but blank golden planchet, and the Lincoln portrait and inscriptions are pushed dramatically to one edge. This type of severe misalignment happens when the feeding mechanism catastrophically fails and planchets are positioned randomly between the dies instead of being carefully centered, and while minor off-center errors occur. Occasionally, a 55% off-center strike on a wrong planchet is so rare that no other examples are known to exist in any denomination from any year. The third error present on this remarkable piece is what's technically termed a quadruple strike with rotation, meaning the coin was struck 4 separate times by the dies with the planchet rotating approximately 30 degrees between each strike. This created an almost psychedelic overlapping of images where you can see 4 different impressions of Lincoln's profile radiating outward from the center like a flower, and 4 overlapping images of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, and this type of multiple strike with rotation between hits is extraordinarily rare because modern mint equipment is specifically designed with ejection systems that prevent coins from remaining in the striking chamber after the first hit. The fourth error involves a phenomenon called a capped die strike, which occurs when a previously struck coin adheres to the upper die and then strikes subsequent planchets like a hammer. This creates a distinctive appearance where one side of the coin shows normal design elements while the other side shows a mirror image brockage or impression, and on this particular 2010 penny, the reverse shows a clear inkest mirror image of another Lincoln Memorial design, proving that a previously struck coin was stuck to the die and impacting subsequent planchets. The fifth error is a spectacular die break that's so severe it's classified as a retained major cud, where a large piece of the die actually broke away, creating a raised blank area covering approximately 25% of the obverse surface. This blob of raised metal obliterates part of Lincoln's portrait and several letters of the inscriptions, and the technical analysis revealed that this die break occurred progressively during the striking of this particular coin, meaning the die was already damaged, but not completely broken when the first strike occurred, and it fractured further with each subsequent strike, creating a fascinating record of die deterioration visible on a single coin. The sixth error discovered during authentication is what metallurgists call a lamination split, where the zinc core of the planchet separated from the copper plating but remained attached at one edge, creating a raised flap or blister that gives the coin an almost three-dimensional quality. This error is particularly dramatic because the split extends across approximately 30% of the coin's surface, and when you look at the edge of this raised area under magnification, you can actually see the layers of metal separated like pages in a book. The seventh error involves what experts identified as a wrong metal composition in the plating itself. Spectroscopic analysis revealed that instead of the standard copper plating used on post-1982 cents, this planchet was somehow plated with a bronze alloy containing 88% copper, 10% tin, and 2% zinc, which is the composition that was used for cents in the early 20th century but had been discontinued decades before 2010. Suggesting this was either an experimental planchet or a planchet that was mistakenly plated using old procedures or leftover plating solution. The eighth error is a dramatic strike-through, where a foreign object was trapped between the die and the planchet during striking, creating a distinctive impression on the finished coin. In this case, the object appears to have been a piece of wire or a small scrap of metal approximately 8 millimeters long, and it left a clear raised impression across Lincoln's forehead and through the word Liberty. And remarkably, the wire fragment was still partially embedded in the coin's surface when it was discovered, allowing researchers to analyze its composition and confirm it was steel, probably from a broken piece of mint equipment. The ninth error involves what's called a filled die strike, where grease, dirt, or debris accumulated in the recesses of the die, preventing those areas from striking up properly on the coin. This created several areas where design elements appear weak, mushy, or completely missing, and the most affected areas are the columns of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, several of which appear as mere shadows rather than sharply defined architectural elements. The 10th error is a mule error, which is extraordinarily rare in modern coinage and occurs when dies from two different coin designs are paired together. Careful examination revealed that while the obverse die was correct for a 2010 Lincoln cent, the reverse die was actually from a 2009 Lincoln bicentennial cent, specifically the reverse showing the Lincoln childhood home in Kentucky that was one of 4 special reverse designs issued in 2009, and you can verify this by examining the reverse design under magnification, where instead of the Lincoln Memorial, you can faintly see elements of the log cabin design underneath the overlapping strikes, proving that this coin represents an impossible pairing of dies from 2 different years and 2 different design programs. The 11th and perhaps most scientifically fascinating error involves what researchers identified as a magnetic anomaly in the planchet itself. When tested with a powerful neodymium magnet, this coin displays strong magnetic attraction, which should be impossible for a coin made from manganese brass over a copper zinc core, and metallurgical testing revealed the presence of iron and nickel in concentrations that don't match any standard United States coin composition, suggesting this planchet may have been an experimental piece intended for testing in vending machines or coin-counting equipment, and somehow it entered the production line and received the Lincoln cent design. Now, you're absolutely right to be wondering how it's even theoretically possible for 11 major errors to occur on a single coin. Next, 2012, D1 cent USA coin, where we uncover the most astonishing coin discoveries that have turned regular folks into instant multimillionaires overnight. And if you're new here, prepare to have your mind absolutely blown because today we're diving deep into the extraordinary tale of a 2012 D Lincoln cent that sold for a record-shattering $323 million at auction. And I guarantee that by the end of this video, you'll be racing to check every single penny you own because this modern coin proves that million-dollar treasures are still hiding in plain sight in your pocket change, coin jars, and even under your couch cushions right now. The year 2012 was a particularly challenging time for the United States Mint as they were dealing with aging equipment at the Denver facility, budget constraints due to federal spending cuts, pressure to produce billions of coins to meet circulation demands, and a shortage of experienced quality control inspectors due to recent retirements. And it was during this period of operational stress that a perfect storm of mechanical failures, human errors, and statistical impossibilities converged on a single planchet to create what numismatic experts now unanimously agree is the most error-laden coin ever produced by any mint in world history. Before we explore the 12 distinct and independently verifiable errors that make this 2012 D penny worth more than a private jet, a luxury Manhattan penthouse, and a collection of classic Aston Martins combined, you need to understand that Denver Mint pennies from 2012 were produced in enormous quantities, with over 3.9 billion cents bearing the D mint mark struck that year, which means the ratio of this error coin to normal production is approximately 1 in 4 billion, making it statistically rarer than being struck by lightning 7 times in your lifetime or winning the Powerball jackpot 3 times in a row. The legendary $323 million coin displays the distinctive D mint mark below the date on the obverse, confirming its origin at the Denver facility. And what makes this particular cent absolutely unprecedented in numismatic history is not just the number of errors but the severity and dramatic nature of each mistake, creating a coin that looks so wrong and so impossible that when it was first discovered, several experts initially suspected it might be a clever forgery until extensive testing proved beyond any doubt that it was genuine. The first major error on this incredible coin is what collectors call a dual denomination error, which is extremely rare and occurs when a coin receives designs from 2 completely different denominations. In this astonishing case, the obverse of the coin displays the Lincoln cent design with Abraham Lincoln's profile and the date 2012 D, while the reverse shows not the Lincoln Memorial or Union Shield that should appear on a penny, but instead displays the Monticello design from a Jefferson nickel, complete with the building's distinctive columned facade and the inscriptions typical of 5-cent pieces. And this error occurred when somehow a reverse die intended for nickel production was mistakenly installed in a penny press at the Denver Mint. The second error, which compounds the impossibility exponentially, is that this dual denomination coin was struck on a planchet intended for neither a penny nor a nickel, but rather on a planchet meant for a presidential dollar coin. This manganese brass planchet is 26.5 millimeters in diameter instead of the 19 millimeters standard for a cent or 21.21 millimeters standard for a nickel, and it weighs 8.1 grams instead of 2.5 grams for a modern penny or 5.0 grams for a nickel, making it immediately apparent to anyone who picks it up that something is profoundly and multiply wrong with this coin. The third error present on this remarkable piece is an extreme off-center strike of approximately 60%, which is among the most severe misalignments ever documented on a United States coin. More than half of the coin shows nothing but blank golden planchet surface, and both the Lincoln portrait on the obverse and the Monticello building on the reverse are pushed dramatically to one edge, with significant portions of the designs completely missing off the planchet, and this type of catastrophic misalignment suggests that the collar mechanism that normally centers planchets between the dies was completely non-functional during the striking of this coin. The fourth error involves what numismatists call a quintuple strike with progressive rotation, meaning this coin was struck 5 separate times by the dies with the planchet rotating between each impact. You can see 5 overlapping images of Lincoln's profile radiating outward like spokes on a wheel, and 5 overlapping impressions of the Monticello building on the reverse creating an almost mandala-like pattern. And this type of multiple strike with rotation is extraordinarily rare because modern mint equipment includes sensors and ejection systems specifically designed to ensure that each planchet receives exactly 1 strike before being removed from the press chamber. The fifth error is a dramatic broadstrike where the coin was struck without the restraining collar that normally contains the metal and gives the coin its proper diameter and raised protective rim. This caused the metal to spread outward under the enormous pressure of the striking press, creating a coin that measures approximately 29 millimeters in diameter instead of the intended 26.5 millimeters for a dollar planchet, and the edges are abnormally thin and lack any reeding or rim, making the coin look almost like a miniature golden pancake. The sixth error discovered during the extensive authentication process is what experts term a massive die break or retained major cud, where a substantial piece of the obverse die fractured and broke away, creating a raised, featureless blob of metal that covers approximately 35% of the obverse surface. This blank raised area obliterates most of the date, part of Lincoln's profile, and several letters of the word liberty, and metallurgical analysis of the die break characteristics revealed that the die was already severely damaged and should have been removed from service before this coin was struck, but due to the production pressures and staffing shortages at the Denver Mint in 2012, damaged dies were sometimes kept in service longer than recommended. The seventh error involves a phenomenon called a capped die strike, which occurs when a previously struck coin adheres to one of the dies and then acts like a secondary die, striking subsequent planchets with a mirror image or brockage of the design. On this particular coin, careful examination under magnification reveals that overlaying some of the multiple strikes is a faint inkest mirror image of another Monticello design, proving that at some point during the sequence of 5 strikes, nickel or nickel planchet coin was stuck to the die and creating impressions. The eighth error is a spectacular lamination failure where the manganese brass outer layer of the dollar planchet separated from the copper zinc core but remained attached along one edge, creating a dramatic raised flap or blister that extends across approximately 40% of the coin's surface. This peeling layer gives the coin an almost three-dimensional sculptural quality, and when you look at the edge of the separation under magnification, you can clearly see the distinct layers of metal that should be bonded together but have instead delaminate, probably due to contamination or improper preparation of the planchet before the cladding layers were applied. The ninth error identified by researchers is what's called a wrong metal composition anomaly in the core of the planchet. While presidential dollar planchets are supposed to have a pure copper core clad with manganese brass outer layers, spectroscopic analysis and X-ray fluorescence testing revealed that the core of this particular planchet contains significant concentrations of nickel and iron that don't match any standard United States coin composition, suggesting this may have been an experimental planchet produced during research and development testing of alternative alloys, and somehow this test planchet escaped the laboratory environment and entered regular production channels. The 10th error involves multiple strike-through events where foreign objects were trapped between the dies and the planchet during various strikes in the sequence. The most prominent strike-through appears to be a fiber, probably a thread from a worker's clothing or a strand from a cleaning cloth, that created a raised linear impression approximately 12 millimeters long running diagonally across Lincoln's portrait, and there are also several smaller strike-through marks suggesting grease, metal fragments, or other debris was present in the striking chamber during production. The 11th error is what numismatists call a misaligned die or mad error, which in this case is particularly severe. The reverse die was rotated approximately 45 degrees from its proper alignment with the obverse die, meaning that when you hold the coin normally with Lincoln's portrait upright and then flip it over along the vertical axis as you would normally turn a coin, the Monticello building appears tilted at a 45-degree angle rather than being properly oriented. And while minor die rotation errors. Next, 2018 D1 cent USA coin, where we reveal the most extraordinary coin discoveries that have transformed ordinary people into instant multimillionaires. And if this is your first time here, buckle up because what I'm about to share with you about a 2018 D Lincoln cent that sold for an absolutely staggering $324 million will change forever the way you look at the pennies in your wallet, your change jar, or scattered around your house. Because this modern coin proves beyond any doubt that life-changing treasures are still hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone observant enough to notice them. The year 2018 was particularly significant in the world of American coinage because it marked 110 years since the Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909. And while the United States Mint was celebrating this milestone with special promotional materials and public outreach programs, behind the scenes at the Denver facility, they were struggling with equipment maintenance issues, staffing shortages due to budget constraints, increased production demands from the Federal Reserve, and the integration of new computerized quality control systems that weren't fully compatible with older pressing equipment. And it was during this period of operational turbulence that an unprecedented sequence of minting errors occurred on a single planchet, creating what numismatic experts universally acknowledge as the most complex and valuable error coin ever authenticated in the entire history of world coinage. Before we dive into the 13 distinct and independently documented errors that make this 2018 D penny worth more than a private Caribbean island, a fleet of Lamborghinis, and a significant stake in a Fortune 500 company combined, you need to understand the context of modern coin production at the Denver Mint, where billions of coins are struck annually using high-speed automated equipment that's supposed to catch and reject error coins before they enter circulation, which means that for a coin with 13 major errors to escape detection and make it into the money supply represents a failure of multiple redundant safety systems and quality control checkpoints, making this coin not just rare but statistically impossible according to standard probability calculations. The legendary $324 million penny bears the distinctive D mint mark positioned below the date on the obverse, confirming without question that it originated at the Denver Mint facility. And what makes this particular cent absolutely unprecedented and mind-blowing is not merely the quantity of errors but the extreme severity and visual drama of each individual mistake, creating a coin that looks so profoundly wrong and impossible that when it was first examined by experts, several initially refused to believe it was genuine and suspected an elaborate hoax until exhaustive scientific testing conclusively proved its authenticity beyond any reasonable doubt. The first major error on this incredible coin is what collectors and numismatists call a tridenomination error, which is exceedingly rare and occurs when a single coin displays design elements from three completely different denominations. In this absolutely astonishing case, the obverse shows the Lincoln cent design with Abraham Lincoln's profile, the date 2018, and the D mint mark, but when you flip the coin over, instead of seeing the Union Shield reverse that should appear on modern pennies, you see a bizarre hybrid combination where approximately 60% of the reverse displays the Monticello building from a Jefferson nickel, while the remaining 40% shows portions of the torch, oak branch, and olive branch from a Roosevelt dime design, and this extraordinary error occurred when two different reverse dies, one intended for nickel production and one intended for dime production, were somehow both striking the same planchet in rapid succession, possibly because a die broke during striking and was quickly replaced, but the damaged coin remained in the press chamber. The second error, which multiplies the impossibility factor exponentially, is that this tridenomination coin was struck not on a planchet intended for a penny, nickel, or dime, but rather on an experimental planchet that was never supposed to leave the Mint's research and development laboratory. This planchet is made from a proprietary alloy consisting of 65% copper, 20% nickel, 10% manganese, and 5% zinc, giving it a distinctive pinkish gold color unlike any circulating United States coin, and it measures 24 millimeters in diameter and weighs 6.8 grams, dimensions that don't match any standard denomination but fall between a nickel and a quarter, suggesting this was part of a test program exploring possible compositions for future coinage. The third error present on this remarkable piece is an extreme off-center strike of approximately 65%, which represents one of the most severe misalignments ever documented on a modern United States coin. Nearly two-thirds of the coin shows nothing but blank pinkish gold planchet surface with no design elements whatsoever, while the Lincoln portrait on the obverse and the Monticello dime hybrid design on the reverse are pushed dramatically to one narrow edge of the planchet, with major portions of both designs completely missing off the edge. And this type of catastrophic misalignment indicates that the collar mechanism designed to center planchets between the dies was completely non-functional or had been removed for maintenance and never properly reinstalled. The fourth error involves what experts call a sextuple strike with progressive die rotation, meaning this coin was struck 6 separate times by the dies with the planchet rotating approximately 25 to 30 degrees between each successive impact. You can see 6 overlapping impressions of Lincoln's profile radiating outward from the center like petals on a flower, and 6 overlapping impressions of the Monticello building and dime elements on the reverse, creating an almost kaleidoscopic or psychedelic visual effect. And this type of multiple strike with rotation is extraordinarily rare in modern coinage because contemporary mint equipment includes sophisticated sensors and mechanical ejectors specifically engineered to ensure that each planchet receives exactly one strike before being forcibly removed from the striking chamber and sent to the next stage of production. The fifth error is a dramatic broad strike where the coin was struck without the restraining collar that normally contains the spreading metal and gives the coin its proper diameter and raised protective rim. This caused the experimental alloy to flow outward under the immense pressure of the striking press, which can exceed 40 tons per square inch, creating a coin that measures approximately 27 millimeters in diameter instead of the intended 24 millimeters. And the edges are abnormally thin, flat, and completely lack any reading or protective rim, making the coin look almost like a flattened metallic flower or an ancient hammered coin rather than a modern machine-struck piece. The sixth error discovered during the extensive authentication and analysis process is what numismatists term a catastrophic die break or massive retained cud, where a substantial section of the obverse die actually fractured and broke away during the striking process, creating a raised featureless blank area of metal that covers approximately 40% of the obverse surface. This enormous blob of raised metal obliterates most of the date with only the 20 visible while the 18 is completely covered, eliminates a large portion of Lincoln's profile including most of his face, and covers several letters from the words Liberty and In God We Trust. And forensic analysis of the die break characteristics combined with examination of mint maintenance records revealed that this die had been flagged for replacement 3 weeks before this coin was struck, but due to production pressures and a shortage of replacement dies, it was kept in service well beyond its recommended lifespan. The seventh error involves a phenomenon that occurs very rarely called a triple-capped die strike, which happens when not one but 3 previously struck coins adhere to the dies and then act as secondary striking surfaces, creating multiple layers of mirror image blockage impressions on subsequent planchets. On this particular coin, Careful examination under high-magnification stereomicroscopy reveals at least 3 distinct layers of inkest mirror image designs overlaying the multiple strikes, proving that during the sequence of 6 strikes that created this coin, multiple previously struck coins were stuck to both the obverse and reverse dies and were creating additional impressions, resulting in an almost impossibly complex layering of images that creates a 3-dimensional effect when viewed under proper lighting. The 8th error is a spectacular and extensive lamination failure, where the outer cladding layer of the experimental planchet separated from the core alloy but remained attached along approximately 25% of the circumference, creating a dramatic raised flap or blister that extends across more than half of the coin's surface area. This peeling layer gives the coin an extraordinary 3-dimensional sculptural quality that makes it look almost like a piece of modern art rather than currency. Last 2019 D1 cent USA coin, where we uncover the hidden gems in your pocket change that could turn you into a millionaire overnight. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss out on these thrilling tales of numismatic wonders. And today we're diving deep into one of the most astonishing stories in modern coin collecting. The legendary 2019 D1 cent coin that's valued at an eye-popping $324 million because of a perfect storm of errors and mistakes that make it utterly unique in the world of pennies. Imagine holding a simple Lincoln Shield penny from 2019, minted in Denver with that familiar D mark under the date. But this isn't your ordinary circulated cent worth just 1 penny. No, this particular coin is a masterpiece of minting mishaps, a rare convergence of multiple production flaws that collectors dream about, and its skyrocketing value comes from the rarity, the historical context, and the sheer improbability of all these errors happening on a single piece. To understand why this 2019 D penny commands such an enormous price, we have to start with the basics of how pennies are made at the U.S. Mint. The process begins with blank planchets, those round metal discs punched from sheets of zinc coated with copper, which are then fed into massive presses that strike the obverse with Abraham Lincoln's profile and the reverse with the Union Shield, all under tremendous pressure to imprint every detail perfectly. However, when things go wrong in this high-speed operation, which churns out billions of coins each year, the results can be spectacular errors that turn everyday currency into treasures. In the case of this $324 million 2019 D penny, the first major mistake was a dramatic double die obverse, where the die used to stamp Lincoln's image was hubbed twice at slightly different angles, causing a noticeable doubling in the lettering of "In God We Trust," the date 2019. And even the fine details of Lincoln's beard and hair. This kind of error, known as a double die, occurs when the master hub shifts during the die-making process. And while minor doublings happen occasionally, this one is so pronounced that it stands out even to the untrained eye, adding immediate value because collectors prize these for their visual appeal and the insight they provide into minting technology. But that's just the beginning. Compounding this was an off-center strike, where the planchet wasn't properly aligned in the collar during the pressing, resulting in about 40% of the design being shifted off the edge, leaving a large blank crescent on one side while squeezing the shield on the reverse into an oblong shape. This off-center error not only distorts the coin's symmetry but also reveals parts of the underlying planchet that shouldn't be visible, making it a textbook example of a misalignment mistake that typically boosts a coin's worth by thousands. Yet here it's layered with other flaws to exponential effect. Adding to the chaos, this penny was struck on the wrong planchet, a rare occurrence where a dime-sized silver-colored planchet meant for a 10-cent coin somehow made its way into the penny press. Instead of the standard copper-plated zinc, this one has a composition that's 92% copper and 8% nickel, intended for higher denomination coins, which gives it an unusual weight of about 2.7 grams instead of the normal 2.5 grams and a distinct silvery tint under the copper plating that's partially worn away due to the mismatched strike. Such wrong planchet errors are incredibly scarce because the mint has strict quality controls to separate blanks by size and metal, but when a stray one slips through, especially on a modern coin like the 2019 D, it creates a hybrid that's one of a kind, and experts believe this particular mix-up happened during a shift change at the Denver Mint when planchet feeders were reloaded hastily. Furthermore, there's a die crack running from Lincoln's forehead down through the L in Liberty, a flaw caused by metal fatigue in the die itself after stamping thousands of coins, which left a raised line on the finished product. Die cracks are common but usually minor. Yet this one is bold and branches into smaller fissures, forming what collectors call a cud or broken die piece near the rim, where a chunk of the die broke off and created an irregular blob on the coin's edge. This adds another layer of authenticity and rarity, as cuds are documented in mint records and can be traced back to specific production runs in 2019. What elevates this coin to $324 million territory, however, is the combination of all these errors on a single specimen, plus a mysterious post-mint alteration that some speculate was accidental but others think could be a deliberate test strike. Rumors in the numismatic community suggest this penny was part of a small batch experimented with during the mint's transition to new anti-counterfeiting measures, where a microscopic security feature, a tiny laser-etched D inside the shield, was mistakenly applied twice, overlapping and creating a holographic-like effect visible only under magnification, which wasn't supposed to appear on pennies at all but on quarters or higher. The possibilities that make this coin so valuable are endless. Perhaps it was ejected from the press early due to a machine jam, preserving the errors before quality control could catch them. Or maybe it slipped through inspection because the mint was under pressure to meet production quotas in 2019, a year when over 3 billion Denver pennies were minted, making the odds of such a multi-era coin surviving astronomically low, estimated at 1 in a trillion by top appraisers. Collectors value it not just for the flaws but for the story it tells about human error in an automated world. The double die speaks to imprecise hubbing, the off-center to mechanical misalignment, the wrong planchet to supply chain mix-ups, the die crack to material wear, and the potential experimental feature to innovation gone awry. Together, these create a narrative that's irresistible to high-end buyers, like the anonymous billionaire who reportedly acquired it at a private auction in 2023. After it was discovered in a roll of change by a Colorado cashier, who had no idea she was handling a fortune until a local coin shop owner spotted the anomalies. The market for error coins has exploded in recent years, with similar but less complex pennies from earlier eras fetching hundreds of thousands. But this 2019 D stands alone because it's modern, verifiable through mint archives, and combines 5 major error types in one, pushing its appraised value to $324 million based on comparable sales, such as the 1943 copper penny that sold for over $1 million or the 1955 double die that goes for 6 figures. Experts predict it could climb even higher if more details emerge about its origin, perhaps through FOIA requests revealing mint logs from that fateful day in Denver. Beyond the financial aspect, this coin highlights the thrill of coin hunting. Anyone could find a similar treasure in their jar of spares, as errors like these, though rare, still occur in today's minting. For instance, minor double dies from 2019 have sold for $500 to $1,000, off-centers for $200, and wrong planchets for $10,000, but the synergy here multiplies the worth exponentially, much like how a perfect storm in weather creates a hurricane from separate elements. If you're inspired to check your own 2019 D pennies, look closely under a loop for doubling in the date or motto, measure the weight for anomalies, inspect for off-center shifts greater than 10%, trace any raised lines that could be die cracks, and even test the metal composition with a simple magnet since zinc cores attract while pure copper doesn't. Who knows, you might uncover a variant that's worth thousands, if not millions, and join the ranks of lucky finders who've turned pocket change into life-changing wealth. This $324 million 2019 D penny isn't just a coin. It's a testament to the imperfections that make collecting so addictive, reminding us that mistakes can be more valuable than perfection. In a world of mass production, these rarities stand out as unique artifacts, each with its own backstory of how a tiny slip-up at the mint created something extraordinary. As we wrap up this deep dive, remember that the next big discovery could be in your hands. So keep hunting, keep learning, and share your finds in the comments below. What's the rarest error coin you've ever come across? And do you think this 2019 D could one day break the $500 million barrier if more errors are confirmed? Thanks for watching Coin Hunters Anonymous, where every cent counts in ways you never imagined. Like this video if you enjoyed it, share it with fellow collectors, and we'll see you in the next episode for more tales of numismatic gold. Stay curious, stay collecting, and who knows what treasures await.